The following thoughts on Happy Hour do not represent Cox Media Group or its sponsoring. Anything you hear may and will be used against you. Thank you.
Are you feeling classy today? Sit down, pour a glass of wine, and listen to Happy Hour.
You're tuned in to Happy Hour, an hour where Happy rants about something. Sit back and listen in. Happy Hour is on now. Happy Hour is on now.
What up? What is happening? This is Happy Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe. And on the phone line from the Dave Mahoney and DK Morning Show, Jason Mahoney is live on Happy Hour. What's up, dude?
What's happening, Ryan? Pleasure to be here.
How honored are you to be on Happy Hour? I've known you for probably 14 months, going on 15 months, and I finally was able to get you on. How honored are you, my man?
Oh, the highest of all honors in all of radio. That's how you know you've made it as a B-level player in radio, is when you can finally attend and be on a taping of Happy Hour.
What is your overall take on Happy Hour? Because I get a lot of love about it, and then there's some haters, but I mean, what's your overall take on this riveting podcast?
No, I love it, man. I love the fact that you're going out of your way and doing what you love. You're not getting paid for it. There's really no compensation for it in any way, shape, or form. You have a true passion for radio. I've got a true passion for radio. And, you know, as a radiophile, it's a good listen.
When did you first become so into radio like me? Like, when was it in your life that you knew you wanted to go into radio?
Well, that's a great question, because I started off similar to you. You know, street team, worked my way up, but I always envisioned myself as becoming a lawyer. Love to talk, love to get out in front of crowds, love to get out and just talk about things. And I always thought, I'll be doing something where I'm talking in front of people and presenting. Yeah. I'll be presenting in front of classes. And then about the age of 16, I discovered drugs, booze, and women, and discovered a strong distaste for school. And so that kind of shifted my gears, decided to not go the, political science law route, and had I love music. I loved 105.7 The Point. I'm originally from St. Louis, and one of the things that I just want to do. I'm like, yeah, I would love to do that. I could talk, I could do that, I could play music, and that kind of sparked my want and need to get into radio, even though I'd been an avid consumer of the medium for, my entire life up till that point.
What was it about 105.7 The Point that drew you in?
From the beginning, though, it was Howard. Actually, you know what? That's not even true. Howard came after there was a show called Jeff, Trish, and Tom. And I believe Tom was there a little while ago, but that was one of the first morning shows that I ever really, can remember listening to. And then after they left and they brought in Howard Stern, not because they were bad or anything, it's just because Howard is, a juggernaut in all of media, came in and just, I listened to them all the time, and Howard just changed everything in St. Louis and made me just riveted. You never heard anything like that. There was all the controversy surrounding Howard. He had his E! show that was there as well. The guy really, truly was the king of all media, plus 105.7 The Point being a legendary alternative station. They were just killing it. Alternative music was the biggest it ever was back then, and they put on the best shows of all time. Point Fest in St. Louis, if, other people who are listening to radio or listening to this podcast want to see how to do a festival show and how to do it well for 20 years, that is the model on how to do it. Probably out of the top 5 shows, or my top 5 shows that I've ever been to, 3 of them would be Point Fests.
What was it about Point Fest that just brings in so many great memories?
Well, the fact, the radio station was out there, and you just waited in line. I would never do this now. I don't know if it's because I've been in radio for too long and I'm jaded, but you would wait in line for several hours, even before the gates opened, before the first band went on. I don't know why we would do that, because you could have showed up 20 minutes later and walked straight in and not had to wait. But at the time, we had no idea that you could even do that. But we would wait in line. The radio station would be out there. They would be firing the cannon, the T-shirt cannon or the T-shirt slingshot. And I remember I'm like you, tall guy, not quite as tall as you, but, being 6'4", 6'5", jumped over the crowd and grabbed a T-shirt that was falling down from one of the street teamers who had tossed it, and it was like the most proud moment of my life until I opened up the T-shirt. And then I realized it wasn't a 105.7 The Point T-shirt. It was a promo shirt from, some soft drink that probably no longer exists, like Surge or something along those lines. But I did eventually get a 105.7 The Point T-shirt, wore it to school religiously almost every week that, went by. And, somebody would always comment on, like, oh, man, that's so cool. I love that station. And there was just a word of mouth, and it was a station, and it still is, that's just a juggernaut in the market that it's in. Love it. It's programmed phenomenally. There's great talent on the air, just an overall, awesome station that I feel like kind of gets overlooked in the scheme of alternative, just because, it's not on one of the coasts and it's not in a top 10 city, but in my opinion, one of the best.
So now how do you go from being such a huge fanboy of 105.7 The Point to then having a job in radio?
Oh, well, I tried to get a job at 105.7 The Point. Wish I could. I did everything that I could. There was a promotions director. I think his name was Kyle Guderian, and I would email this guy. I mean, this is like 1999, 2000, 2001. I would be emailing this guy, 2002. I'd be emailing this guy saying, hey, I would love to be on your street team. Hey, I'll come wash your car. Hey, I'll literally do anything that you have. And I couldn't find the PD's contact information anywhere. There was just a way to get a hold of the promotions guy so you could get on the street team. And I tried that for months and months and months and months and just never got any traction. And then one day, I heard I know this is going to sound cliche, but I don't care. I heard an advertisement on The Point, and it was talking about a broadcast school in St. Louis and called the Broadcast Center. And I'm like, well, maybe if I had no experience, I'll go there. So I enrolled in that program there, and I started working at the radio station at the community college that I was also going to at the same time, and kind of to get my foot involved in radio in some way, shape, or form. The broadcast school, kind of a complete waste of time, but it kind of got you, familiar with kind of how radio works a little bit. I don't know. I was around jocks who were, in the St. Louis market, and those guys kind of guided me to where I needed to be, as well as while doing like I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays nights from, 6 to 9 on the New Wave, which is the Florissant Valley Community College radio station up there, and eventually found my way into radio, first paying gig. So, but I did everything that I could to get on at The Point, and still, never would they ever even hire me for even a part-time car washing job. I was never qualified enough, apparently.
Who have been some of your mentors that have helped you along the way in your radio career?
Well, there's a lot of people who've helped me out along my way. And the first one that comes to mind is Chris Ripley. He was my program director at X1075. This is the guy who's given me a lot of opportunities. He was the one who brought me from, my first regular job in radio. I was working nights at an oldies station and doing voice track overnights at a hot AC top 40 hybrid in Champaign, Illinois. He's the one who brought me out from there to Las Vegas to work in alternative radio, to work in rock radio. And that kind of really, I spent the better part of 11 years there. So Chris Ripley, my former PD, he's now out of radio, but he was a huge influence. My PD at the oldies station, this guy, his name was Mitch Allen. He passed away, unfortunately, a few years back, but this guy was another true radiophile. He gave me tapes and CDs and just countless hours of material from amazing jocks, and, not from the current era, but from, the big boss jock era. You're thinking of, John Records Landecker is one that just stands out of my mind. I listened to so many hours from, John Records out of Chicago, who was just, a talent like no other back then. And those two PDs really kind of helped shape the early portion of my career by making me listen to other fantastic radio personalities and how fantastic radio was done. And also both gave me a really good shot. And if we're going over onto the jock side, I mean, the first show that I ever wanted to really kind of just be a part of and I was a part of just because I was a listener, and I'm just blown away by how big and phenomenal they were back then, was Woody Show. It is not the current incarnation of the Woody shows currently down in Los Angeles. They were in San Francisco for a while, but they're in Los Angeles now. But when they were in St. Louis, it was Woody and the Whipping Boy, and those guys just killed it. I mean, they were the biggest afternoon show in the world, and it was amazing to be able to listen to the kind of stuff that they got away with on the radio. Especially, I think I was, maybe 18, 19, 20, somewhere around that age, very young, listening to these guys and saying, this is what I kind of want to do in radio. And I remember I was so heartbroken when Woody was fired. I couldn't believe that it was, real. I was like, this has got to be fake. I was working at the community college radio station at the time. I'm like, no, this is just a bit for them. The general manager gets on the radio and he's like, well, due to complaints and other things that have happened behind the scenes here, the Woody Show is no longer employed at 105.7 The Point, and they gave a number that you could call and voice your opinion, which obviously did nothing because I called it multiple times. I'm like, this has to be fake, and if it's not, you're the biggest moron on the planet. You should hire Woody back. So Woody's another one of the guys that I always looked up to when I was coming up in radio. I was graced with the opportunity to work with, in my opinion, the best solo jock in the entire country in any format. And it's probably a name that I don't know if you've heard, even you're familiar with, Ryan. I would be shocked if you were. I know you're probably the biggest radiophile that I know, but the guy who was doing afternoons at X1075 in Las Vegas, he started with the radio station, I think, around 1999, and he left in 2005. This guy's name is Rob Poole, is his given name, but he always went by Hardy on the radio, and literally the most talented jock that I've ever heard in my entire life. And as a 22, 23-year-old kid rolling into Las Vegas, listening to the radio, working on this radio station with this afternoon guy who was, a god. We had Howard in the morning and Hardy in the afternoon. I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to be a full-time jock here. There's no way I'll ever be able to be anywhere as good as Hardy is. And the station was just full of killers back then. And about a year later, Hardy got promoted, and he ended up going up to WBCN in Boston to work at the alternative station up there. But in the short time that I worked with him, a little under a year, the guy just taught me so much just from listening and watching him work. And still, in my opinion, he's up there at whatever WBCN turned into the sports station now with Toucher and Rich in the morning. He's their imaging guy and still does weekends and other shifts, fill-ins. Still one of the most talented and underrated jocks in the entire country. I suggest you give him a listen whenever you get a chance.
We seem to have so much in common when it comes to being influenced by so many different shows. For me, I love Woody. I also love Opie and Anthony, Jonathan Brandmeier, this and that. But what I've noticed, dude, since I've got into radio is I'm listening to it less and less because I don't want to take bits from other shows and somehow be influenced by it. But I do listen to podcasts because I want to hear what other shows do and how I can incorporate myself to be a better host. So what I want to ask you is, since you've been in radio for so long, do you find yourself listening to it less and less since you're a part of the grind? Or do you find some sort of happiness listening to other shows?
No, man, I do. I appreciate what other people are doing, and I don't like to tear down other radio shows unless they're coming at me, man. I don't. We don't start stuff with other radio. If you want to start something, we'll be happy to throw down. Dave, myself, and DK, and our producer Jared are I think some of the most talented people that I've ever worked with ever. They're amazing, and if somebody wants to fight, we certainly can bring a fight to them. but we don't like to tear down other shows just as a habit because, in this day and age, anybody who's gainfully employed, you're probably doing something right because, there are so few jobs left, so few good jobs, and there's so many jobs or so few jobs that are really good, and they're all hard to come by. So I don't like that aura of that era. Do I want to be involved with something like that? I don't know. I don't think so. Just because it's just, is it going to help my listeners, or my listeners going to be invested in it? I don't know if that era of radio is still super relevant today. I think if you had those listeners who were listening back when those radio wars were going on and were so prevalent and they were so compelling, I think it's okay for that. But if you're, have the new age listener, the 2015 listener, I don't know if they want to listen to me pontificate for an hour about how much somebody else sucks because they don't like me. That seems very self-indulgent. But to answer your question, I don't have a problem with listening to other shows. I like it. I think there's a lot of creative people out there doing a lot of good things. I don't like to listen to shows in my own market. That is the caveat. Once I'm in a market, I really don't like to listen to what other people are doing because I feel like that, it gets a little dicey there. Not that I'm saying that, you're going to take stuff from other people, but I think even on a subconscious level, you can absorb somebody else's thoughts or the way that they do that. I think that's just a natural human gift or whatever that we have. If you hear something enough, you eventually either become like it or you absorb it in some way, shape, or form. That's why I like to listen to a lot of radio shows outside the market. And I know the one that I've probably listened to the most over the last 11 years that I was doing alternative radio before I got into Hot AC was Kevin and Bean. And I know that it's kind of like Howard, that so many people were influenced by Howard. So many people were influenced by Kevin and Bean. Those guys, did and still continue to do great and amazing radio. And the fact that they're not in the same room and that they still have the kind of chemistry that they do, my hat's off to them. I don't know how they do it because when we have Dave in another city, I know we're still good, but we're not as good as we are when we're, sitting 3 feet away from each other across the board.
No, how did you meet Dave?
Dave came in 2005. He was to be the replacement for Howard Stern on X1075. He was doing a show in Columbia, South Carolina. Him and two other guys brought out. Dave was the lead. There was a color guy, and then there was the stunt boy, who were Brian and Lemmy, and they were called the Extreme Disorder. They were going to be the new morning show, but we knew Howard was leaving terrestrial radio to ascend to the heavens of Sirius radio. And so we were being proactive, which, it's kind of funny to look back at now because there's so many stations that are not proactive, even though they know that their morning show's leaving or they're going to have a hole to fill. But our boss and our GM at the time were very proactive about this, and they hired Dave and brought him out and were kind of prepping him to become the new morning show. And they knew that, whoever was going to follow up Howard was going to have a tough time because following up Howard, if we've looked across the country at how many morning shows are still left who actually, did follow up Howard, we've got one and BJ Shea in Seattle, and the rest I think have, either failed, split up, been moved to a different day part, or just aren't even in radio anymore. So, we knew that this was going to be a tough road to hold when replacing Howard. So Dave comes in, he's doing his afternoon show. We become pretty good friends right off the bat. I'm the weekend overnight guy and main overnight fill-in guy as well. And when he first starts, he does that, and he's killing it in the afternoons. And then we find out that Howard is not going to be replaced by Dave, that Adam Carolla is going to be replacing Howard in, 10 different West Coast markets for CBS. And so Dave no longer is going to be the morning show guy. He stays in the afternoon. I get promoted to full-time overnights, and just our friendship grew from there. We instantly just kind of got along. He was a young, cool guy. I was a young guy. We like to go out, have some beverages. One thing we shared in common, hard work. I saw how much work he put into his show every single day to make it amazing. And I did everything that I could around the radio station and went back to what I was telling you about trying to get on at 105.7 The Point. You know, I was a street teamer. I was the weekend overnight guy. I ran every single piece of recorded programming that we ever did. I did the PSA show. I just did whatever you needed me to do, I would do. I was kind of your go-to utility guy at the time, and they eventually promoted me up from weekends and all that to full-time overnights, and then eventually went from full-time overnights to nights at X1075 because my buddy Hambone, who goes by Casey McCabe, who's now at AMP in Los Angeles, had gotten a job at K-Rock, which was the big K-Rock LA, which was still one of the biggest stations in the entire world, one of the highest billing stations. He got a job there and left an opening for me. I ascended to that night position, and then, I kid you not, 3 weeks later, I get a call from Phil Manning, who was the program director at 91X in San Diego at the time. And he says, "Hey, man, heard some good things about you," which I'm like, how did you even hear about me? I'm an overnight guy in Las Vegas. You're a big-time program director who was on The Real World and ran the End during his glory years up in Seattle, and now you're running one of the best alternative stations on the West Coast in 91X. And he's like, "Yeah, we're putting together a morning show down here, so I would like you to come out and try out. We'll see how you mesh with the other guy we have pegged to be the co-host and the host of the show, and see if you guys have some chemistry, and we'll see what happens." And so ended up going down to San Diego, getting that job, getting mornings, working with Phil Manning. He was another one of the guys who really influenced my career, just an amazing mind for radio, great ear for anything music. The guy's great. He's back in your hometown of Chicago now, still doing radio, just not on the programming side anymore. And worked with him for a little under a year. And then when the 2008 collapse happened and everybody in radio got laid off because the economy had died, he got let off, and I knew my time there was limited. I knew that since I was the guy that he brought in, that I was probably not long for the world down there at 91X. So this kind of leads back to where Dave and I got together. He was coming to the end of a contract at X1075 because they had Adam Carolla in the morning, Opie and Anthony in the middays, and then Dave's show was in afternoons. And, you're paying all this money for big-time talent when Carolla and O&A, and then you're paying a morning show that was supposed to replace Stern in the afternoons. They didn't renew their contract, not because their numbers weren't good, because Dave was number one with men, I think, every demo in 2008. They just couldn't, they couldn't afford to keep a three-person show on and, keep it all going. I think we had 50 people laid off from our cluster that year. I mean, it was a brutal year in Las Vegas. I was in San Diego when that happened, and so his contract runs out. I'm unhappy in San Diego. My boss was gone, so I didn't really have a program director who was, who had my back, who I was his guy. It's like, when a guy brings you in, he hires you, you're his guy, and when he leaves, things get dicey, And I knew that the writing was on the wall, and I ended up getting laid off shortly, maybe 3 or 4 months after Phil left. But before that happened, Dave and I were preparing ourselves for what we were going to do next, because we got a tip that Adam Carolla was going to be pulled from all the CBS radio stations. He wasn't doing very well in a lot of markets, specifically Los Angeles. He wasn't doing great. And he was doing well in Las Vegas, but they weren't just going to leave him on there. So Dave and I went to our buddy Casey McCabe and went down to K-Rock and actually put together our demo in the K-Rock studios for our morning show. So that was pretty surreal, being in the K-Rock studios, putting together a demo tape. I've gone back and listened to it several times. It's one of the worst demos that I've ever heard for a morning show. But, we were able to convince Chris Ripley, Dave and I's former program director, to hire us back for mornings in April of 2000. Actually, it was March of 2009, and we debuted on April 20th, 2009 on X1075.
And now, what is it like when you guys finally get that morning show slot and you replace Adam and you guys then get higher ratings than him? What is that like as someone who has had a passion for radio for so long?
It was unreal. I mean, it was unreal to have a morning show, to be the first local morning show on X1075. There was nothing before Howard. Howard actually existed on that frequency in Las Vegas before the alternative station even existed. So it went from Howard to Adam, and we were given the reins as the very first morning show that X1075 ever had, and it was an honor. I mean, this was a station that I had worked at for 5 years, and this was a station that Dave had worked at for 3.5 years, something along those lines. And we love the city. You know, Las Vegas is an amazing town, and it's a pretty great radio market too. You know, a lot of really good talent has come through Las Vegas, but for the fact that we were given that chance, it was unreal, and did well right out the gate. Didn't really have a whole lot of hate either. You know, we expected that there was going to be a decent amount of backlash because Adam Carolla was popular in Las Vegas. It was one of the markets that he did do very well in, and they were very receptive to us. The listeners of Las Vegas were very, very receptive to us. It helped that we had been on the radio station and kind of were homegrown guys from the radio station who were given this opportunity. But when we started, it was just me and him. We didn't have a phone screener. We didn't have a DK as the co-host. We didn't have a producer in like we do now with Jared Jones. It was just me and Dave kind of flying by the edge of our seats, just doing whatever we thought was interesting at the time. And a lot of mistakes were made, you know, as far as content goes and what we were talking about, but it was stuff that we were really, really passionate about. Our program director, Chris Ripley, at the time gave us enough rope to hang ourselves with, and luckily, you know, even though we probably should have hung ourselves with that rope, the listeners took to it. You know, we were all about beer, mixed martial arts, which is, you know, Las Vegas is the home of the UFC, so we were all about the UFC and just, you know, keeping it real, you know, real talk. None of this fluff, none of this just candy-coated garbage. Oh, the world is peachy. It's just two guys who are good friends, having a good time, and talking about things like adults do. And so, you know, it caught on real quick. We went up to number one with men, you know, I think within the first two books that was even before PPM came out. So, you know, we made a pretty good change and a pretty good sizable impact real quick in Las Vegas. And I think that speaks to, you know, it wasn't the fact that how good we were or any of that thing. You know, I still don't think that, oh my God, we're great. We're these radio guys who know what they're talking about and they're phenomenal. I feel like our show is rooted in our friendship. You know, it's two guys, and now we have two other people who are also really great friends of ours. And it's just this family of people and who are all friends who just talk, you know, and it's real. And if you feel like you're on the outside listening in, like you feel like you're a part of that group, you know, it's like, I can't tell you how many times that somebody's come up and said, man, I feel like I know you. You know, it's like, it's so bizarre listening to you guys talk because I'm just shaking my head, nodding along like I'm standing with some friends having a conversation at the bar or at a party or at dinner. You know, it's really humbling when somebody comes up and says that. You know, it's like they're like, I don't want this to sound creepy, and to me that's not creepy at all. It's one of the highest honors I think somebody can pay me. It's like, I feel like I know you. Then you've obviously been listening to the show for a long time, and thank you so much. Let me buy you a beer.
And now, how did you guys go from the Dave and Mahoney show to the Dave, Mahoney, and DK show? When did you guys add DK to the mix?
Well, DK was around pretty much from the beginning. She wasn't there every day. She would come in once a week. We had a couple features that we would do with her, and she would come in to get the female's perspective because, you know, like I just said, I think we did a lot of things wrong early on, you know, because it was two guys, and we were just having fun and just kind of shooting from the hip and doing whatever we wanted. So it was there was a lot of just like two dudes and two dongs talking into two mics. It was very, very, very dude centric and very, very, very like kind of alpha male centric as well. If you didn't love mixed martial arts and you didn't love beer, I'm shocked that you stuck around on our show. But we, you know, kind of got some guidance from our program director that we did listen to, Chris Ripley, and he said, hey, there's this girl over in sales who I think is funny as hell, and you should bring her in on some segments. And that's kind of how she started in. There was a segment where we would just ask her questions, It's like, because guys, as you know, the fairer sex, we're pretty stupid about that most of the time, or at least I am. And so we wanted to get her opinion on that. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing highbrow, but just kind of see how she handled herself with us, and she held her own. And then the other thing that we did was a segment that I created in San Diego called Beer for Breakfast, which is still one of my favorite pieces of program that I've ever done. Craft beer is blowing up. I don't know if you just saw the other day, Bud is buying Miller for $100 billion.
Are you serious?
Big part of yeah, $100 billion. Not $100 million, $100 billion. But a big part of that is craft beer, and it's been the biggest growth industry inside the beer market over the last 10 years, and we really latched onto that, reviewing beer, and plus it gave us a chance to drink on Thursday mornings, and, that doesn't suck either. But she joined us on that, and so she held her own, and she did that for, I think it's first 2.5 years. And then by year number, I want to say is near the end of year 2 or the beginning of year 3, she just really said, she said to us, she's like, hey, I would, like to come in more. And we're like, yeah, we would love to have you in more. And, it's like the dynamic of the show changes. It goes from 2 dudes and 2 mics to, we've got this kind of interesting back and forth between me and her, and Dave there kind of directing all the traffic. And we really liked how that sounded on the air. And so she started coming in on her own time. Just, she had a sales job to do, had an 8-hour job to go do after the show, but she would come in and do 4 hours with us in the morning and then go do 8 hours of sales after that. And that went on over a year. And she did that every day, Monday through Friday, and never complained once. Didn't do, didn't affect her sales or anything like that. But then about a year and a half later, she said, went to the boss, and we're like, yeah, it'd be nice if I could focus on this 100%. We feel like this is the show, how it should be. We really, really like this dynamic. And she was the top seller on our hot AC station at the time. And it took a lot of convincing to the GM to be able to let the top seller from our biggest billing station come off sales and come on the air. And but we twisted his arm enough, and she eventually joined us full time. And after you kind of go through the dues or the initiation that she did, it just made sense to put her name on the show, because she had earned it. And we wanted to we didn't want her to feel like, this is an old boys club and, you're not a part of this show. And we really wanted her to, feel welcome and feel like she was, a member of the show, a full member. And, because she always held her own, and it was the right thing to do. I feel like that, if, a lot of shows are kind of afraid to change the name that they have because they've been around for so long or something along those lines. But Dave and I, it's like we just didn't even think about it. We thought it just felt right. So we asked her, and she said, of course I would love my name in the show. But now we've kind of got this weird conjunction of names. You've got Dave's first name is the beginning part of the show name. You've got my last name. It's in the middle. And DK, which stands for Dana Kramer, initials. So you got a first name, a last name, and initials as a show title. So it's, it's a little jumbled in there, but it works for us, man. And we wouldn't have it any other way. We're really glad that she put in all the hard work to join us on the show, because, it shows dedication. And, it reminds me a lot of what you're doing, being willing to move across the country, do any job, work for free, do stuff on your own free time, because that's how it pays off. And, she's now moved across the country with us to market number 6. We're in the 4th largest city in the country. And I think in the next census, Houston will be the 5th largest city. I believe I think that's 2020 is what they're projecting. So, we're in a major market now, and, it's like she went from having 0 radio experience to being in a major market in under 5 years.
What's it like when you guys go from a medium market to a major market? Do you guys feel any more pressure, or do you guys just keep going with the same old, we're a bunch of friends, we'll turn on the mic and put on a great show?
We're a bunch of friends. We're going to turn on the mic and put on a great show, but doing that, we also come very prepared. Every day I leave, I don't know, 20 stories that we don't talk about on the floor, on the cutting room floor. We are so prepared going into every single show, either with bits or with topics or with news stories that are topical, that are huge, that we have to talk about, that there's no way, even if we had a 6-hour show, that we could get to all those topics. And that's, I feel like, if you're not doing that, if you're running out of things to talk about as a talk show, you're doing it wrong. But moving from a city like Las Vegas, most people don't realize, at least especially the non-radio people don't realize how small Las Vegas is. I think it's market 31 or 32 in the last update, but it is a world-class city. That's the thing that sets it apart from other cities, I say, in that, in that 20-ish to 40-ish range, which, are typically considered either large or medium-sized markets. But Las Vegas is a world-class city. I mean, you've got the more entertainment options there. There's more things to do in Las Vegas per capita than any other city on the planet. I mean, New York, yes, there's so much stuff to do. Chicago, there's so much stuff to do. LA, there's so much stuff to do. But those are also huge, expansive cities. You've got, 15 million in the greater New York area. You got, 11 in Los Angeles' greater metropolitan area and all the counties surrounding it. So, you've got these huge populations, whereas Las Vegas, you're in this tiny little centralized valley, and you've got 2 million people, and trying to cut through all the crazy stuff that's going on in that tiny little valley was hard, and I really think kind of, prepared us for moving to a major market like Houston.
And now, would you say your show is any different now that you guys have gone from X1075 to Mix 96.5, or would you say it's the same old show?
I would say the only difference in our show between X1075 and Mix 96.5 is that I no longer say the words douchebag and I no longer call people pussies. Those are the two things that I don't do anymore. I've since swapped out the word douchebag for D-bag or clown or, some other word that I could think of to call it to insult somebody. And, instead of a pussy, you're a wuss. Because those are big kind of turn-off words, especially when you're in a city like Houston. It's Texas. It's certainly more family-centric than Las Vegas. You can get away with a lot in Las Vegas. I'm thinking of the 10 years, 11 years that I was on the air there total, and how many complaints we got. I can count on one hand, really. And, so they were pretty liberal with things of that nature. But Houston, a little bit more conservative on that tip. But like I said, outside of those two key buzzwords, show's pretty much the same. That's why our boss, Charisse Frugier, who I haven't mentioned yet, but one of the best women in radio, hands down. She has programmed some of the biggest stations all across the country, from Los Angeles to San Francisco to Denver to San Diego, and now she's vice president of programming, operations manager here in Houston for CBS, and a former morning show host as well, which you don't find that too often in your either VP of programming or OM or even your PD for that point. They've worked around plenty of morning shows, but to actually have some real legitimate success as a morning show host and transition to, the executive level of programming, you don't see it. So that's been a tremendous help for us. She's always been one of the brightest minds in hot AC, and working with her has really, helped mold our show into becoming just as mass appeal as possible. It's like we want as many people. We want to be the biggest thing in any city that we're in, which is why we went from being a dude-centric show at X1075 to being just a pop culture show. We are a show for the masses in Las Vegas. We were a mass appeal show on an alternative station. Now we're a mass appeal show on a hot AC, and I feel like it's an example, or it's actually going to be a little bit easier for us here in Houston, because alternative traditionally, your cume is much, much lower. But then you look over at hot AC, we're cuming 1.5 million people a month here at this station. So it's night and day in terms of the amount of listeners who are cycling through us. And it kind of advertises itself. So we're not mad at the switch, and a lot of people kind of questioned our thought process on moving from alternative to hot AC, but never once in all of our conversations did we ever have any doubt that our show would translate and be successful here in Houston on a hot AC. Our boss, she thought it was a good idea. We all thought it was a good idea, and we were glad that a few months ago when she approached us with this idea that she came to us, because this is a huge opportunity for us, and Houston's an amazing city. I mean, I don't know if you ever come here, you'll see why this city has some really talented radio people here, and while outside of that, you'll see that the people of Houston are engaged and are very receptive to radio because they spend an hour plus in their car every day. The traffic here is just horrendous, but it means we have a captive audience for however long their commute is, which is great considering coming from Las Vegas, the average commute was 12 minutes.
Now, where do you want to see your show in the next year or two, since you guys went from a medium market to a major market? Where do you want to see the Dave Mahoney and DK show?
Number one, obviously, this is there's a couple heritage shows here down in Houston. Rod Ryan being one of them, Rula and Ryan being another one. There's a classic rock show that's been around here for a while, but I think a lot of the shows here they've had it good. And they haven't had a lot of young talent in this market for a long time. And, like I said, we're not going to attack any of those guys. They're all good at what they do. That's why they've been around for as long as they have. But we're here to raise the bar. And I think that our show, just from the listener response that we've gotten already, 20-some-odd shows into this market, it's unreal. I thought, you get phones going, it's going to take a while to get people who are going to differentiate between me and Dave and understand DK, that Dave's not Dave Mahoney. There's three of us here, these obstacles that you face when you go to a new city that, you kind of don't think about, like, oh, we got to make sure that they know that there's two guys here, plus our producer, and we're all different people. And we've got Dana Kramer, DK, that she's, what she's about as well. And, what I would say in the next year, I would like to be, certainly in the top three. That's where I would like for us to go. Obviously number one would be amazing, and that's what we're gunning for, and that we'll never stop for that. But if I'm speaking realistically, where I think we will be in the next year, I think we're going to be top three adults, 25-54. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all, considering just the heritage of this radio station that we have, the programming team that we have behind it, the jocks that were on this radio station as well, and that's one of the things that I love about Cherie. She doesn't hire people, and she doesn't coach people who are just kind of cheesy liner jocks. We've got a really great team. The afternoon guy, Chad Pitt, really talented. He's out, big face in the community. Our midday girl, Lauren Kelly, she's another person who even before I ever thought about moving to Houston, I had my eye on. Because how good she was and how much she does out in the community and how good she is on air. So we have a kind of a rock star team here, and I see our show, competing with the heritage shows of this market without a doubt, man. In the next year, I look forward to it. Because it's like these are people who have been here, they've been established. We did this in Las Vegas. Mark and Mercedes were one of the biggest radio shows in the Valley, and we're untouchable. They won Best of Las Vegas 15 years in a row, and it took us 3 years, but we ended up winning Best of Las Vegas. Took it away from them. Nobody ever thought that was going to happen. Then we came in and we won it a second year, back to back, and people were shocked by that. And then going for the third year that we were going for it, they discontinued the award because they're like, well, I don't know if these are the people that we want to give the award to. So they literally just discontinued the Best of Las Vegas Radio Personality Award after we broke their streak, which I thought was pretty funny. And I feel like, here we've our intensity's only ratcheted up, man. We're hungry and want to come in here and make a splash. This is a great radio market, and no reason for us to not want to put roots down. Dave bought a house, DK bought a house, I'm building a house. Houston's our home, and I look forward to years to come here.
Now, before I let you go, what is the future of radio? Radio has changed so much between 2005 to now in 2015. Where will radio be in 2025, Mahoney?
2020. Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's a little far away. But here's where I think radio is going to be. And the death of radio is not going to be Pandora. It's not going to be Spotify. It's certainly not going to be horrible Apple Music. It's going to be self-driving cars. Self-driving cars are what's going to really, 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 really hurt radio. And I know that sounds like a little bit ridiculous, but the moment you can start watching Netflix in your car, that's the moment when we start competing against, a whole other medium, which may make it even harder to break through. I don't think there's going to be self-driving cars that are readily available in 2025, but the way I see radio happening in 2025, it's going to be more talk. It's going to be talk. It's going to be personality-driven radio. The music is great. Yes, absolutely. There are people who will never get onto those services to stream music or download music because it's work. And thank goodness there are lazy people who don't want to have to go find music because it is a hassle to find music. But I think the future and I think the success on radio hinges upon the personalities, 100%. If you can give them something that they cannot get elsewhere, then you are doing something right. And I feel like that's what we do with our morning show. I feel like that's what a lot of these other morning shows across the country are doing as well, who are having a lot of success. Give them something they want to hear and that they can't get elsewhere, or they can't get from an algorithm that's going to feed it to your phone or feed it to your car or anything along those lines. I see more and more talk radio, especially because considering the royalty rates are only going to go up and up and up and up and up, and it's going to cost more money to run music stations in the future. So I feel like talk is the way to go. And I feel like, even though radio is not as glamorous and as gigantic as it was 20 years ago, I feel like radio is still very healthy. There's a lot of money to be made. And I feel like there's a lot of entertainment. And there's still a rabid fan base out there who will consume what you are putting out if you're putting out good product. If you're putting out crap, yeah, radio sucks. Radio's dying. But if you're putting out, if you're a great show who's putting out good content, radio's alive and well, and that's why I'm excited to see what you do with your future. I know you're still what is this? You're 2 years in working in radio full time, not full time, but working, getting
basically
paid to do radio.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, man, and you got a long way to go, and you've already worked with Shane French and Rover in Cleveland. Those guys are great, and I know I was sad to see you depart from there, but when I saw that you were popping up down at the Bone down in Tampa, another amazing talk station, like I said, you picked a great place to cut your teeth at because you got a lot of really talented personalities down there, and I wish there were more young people in radio like you, because I'm becoming an old man, and I'm 34 years old.
You're not old. You're young at heart, Mahoney. Don't say that about yourself, dude.
Yeah, I'm getting there. But, very impressed with everything that you're doing, Ryan. I hope you keep it up. Big fan of the Hoppe Hour. So very, very, very grateful for you to have me on, man.
Yeah, man.
I really am.
The thing is, I want to be the next outspoken host for my generation because my generation, and I will say it because it's a podcast, is a bunch of uptight pussies that doesn't want to hear the truth. So I want to be the outspoken millennial that speaks it as it is and speaks the truth for my generation. I would love to have my own show. That's my goal. But if I can make a living through podcasts and through getting money through advertisers or monetizing it, I'll do whatever it takes, dude. I have wanted to do this for so long, dude, that I have my eye on the prize, especially now that they let me record the podcast. I'm honored in these production rooms at the Cox Media Building. The fact that they even let me record it after hours gets me even more motivated, dude, to make it in radio because I want to be the next outspoken voice. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. And let me ask you this, because I'm curious. Do you think the millennials can handle somebody who's outspoken, though?
Yes.
Because we've seen Jerry Seinfeld, we've seen Chris Rock, a lot of these big-time comedians who aren't even controversial by any means, who refuse to play shows at college universities because everybody's too politically correct. or they're too sensitive, or my delicate snowflake feelings are going to be hurt because you said something mean about me, or we're going to cancel Halloween for an entire school because somebody thinks it's a religious holiday, and that's going to offend me. So if my child can't do it, the rest of you cannot either. But do you think that the millennials...
Oh, yeah, because I love Jerry Seinfeld. I love Chris Rock. I love guys like that. But the thing is, people on my generation that didn't watch Seinfeld, that didn't appreciate Chris Rock, they just see them as old guys ripping into my generation. But I try to be relatable, and I think what's going to work for me and what's going to work for Happy Hour is they're going to be like, wow, we've never heard radio like this, even though Howard's done it, Opie and Anthony's done it, you guys have done it. I think it's going to be so fresh.
Those guys, they don't know who those guys are.
Yeah, that's... I've never had this, dude. People come up to me, they go, I've never heard radio like yours. I'm like, it's going back to the 70s. Everyone's done it. But that's why I think I can make this work, is because I think they're more willing to listen to a babbling idiot that's their age speaking the truth. They don't want to hear Jerry Seinfeld trashing them. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld might have good points, dude. But at the end of the day, they're not going to respect the guy who's talking down to them. I just want to open up people's minds, dude. The movie Idiocracy is coming to life. We are so offended by everything every single goddamn day, Mahoney. That's what I want to bring to radio, is to get rid of this fake outrage. It can happen. All we have to do, Mahoney, is ignore the words. Words don't hurt. My God, dude, it gets me so angry. I'm sick of it.
I love it. And I'll tell you this much. If Terry Crews ran for president, I would vote for him 100%. I wish Terry Crews would run in 2020. Forget Kanye, Terry Crews, 2020.
I like money.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing. I love listening to your podcast. You know, you're one of the few and up and coming talents out there who really has a heart for it, and I know you got a future, brother.
Where can people find your work online before I let you go?
You can find us in a multitude of places. We are on iTunes. If you search Dave Mahoney DK, you can find us there. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're not on Snapchat yet because we don't want people to sending us pictures of their dongs. But all those three, Dave Mahoney DK, and you can find our podcast also on the radio.com app and mix965houston.com. So find us on there. Appreciate you allowing me
of course,
the
dude.
time on Happy Hour, Ryan.
Of course. It's one of those things, man. I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't get to talk until like the last 3 hours left of the morning show boot camp when it was me, you, Dave, and Jared watching that car crash outside of the Renaissance Hotel. I mean, we didn't really get to talk until the last few hours of the event. So I'm glad that we've been able to talk on Twitter and on Facebook, man. You're one of the guys that I really look up to because you guys do edgy radio, but it's not hacky. It's not exploitation. It's just fun radio, man. And that's why I wanted you to come on Happy Hour, man, because I see a lot of things that we have in common. So this has been a lot of fun having you on Happy Hour, dude.
Many thanks. My appreciation goes to you, and I hope we can have a couple more of those drunken nights with all the good guys from Morning Show Boot Camp out of
next
Chicago.
Year. I promise.
You got to come next year, man. You got to come
promise.
Next year.
I just couldn't afford it. But next year, dude, we will get turned up. I promise.
Absolutely.
All right. Talk to you later, dude.
Take care.
All right. And that was Jason Mahoney from the Dave Mahoney and DK show as he called into Happy Hour to talk about his career. There are a lot of guys in radio that I like. I would consider myself a radio geek. But one of the things that I liked about Jason Mahoney was I'm at the bar and he just comes up to me and he goes, "How tall are you?" And having a tall guy ask me that is less annoying than when like a person that's not tall asks me that. So we began talking, and I just liked his vibe that it was two dudes drinking a beer at the bar, conversing. So I'm glad that we've been able to build a friendship. So they are going to kick ass in Houston. I promise you. Their show is legit. Go on Google, Search up Dave Mahoney and DK. Open up your apps. Search up Dave Mahoney and DK. It's one of the best shows out there. This has been Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, saying peace out.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour.
This is an official broadcast of Hoppe Radio. For more info, check out hopperadio.com and hoppesworld.com.